session.
This is Connection Sundays with Mark, Dahn, Sharon, Wallace, and Joel Dietrich.
We get to do. And so we'll introduce ourselves, but maybe even as we begin this session, just so you get to see who in the room is doing what kind of different roles. It's always kind of interesting because it informs your understanding of ideas shared, question asks, and stuff like that. So let's start with this. Who here is let's start with DCE. Who's a DCE in the room? All right. Got a couple DCs. I should have done last because DCs are always usually the loudest and most enthusiastic. But
we can do better.
Yeah, I bet. Who are the teachers in the room? And of the who are administrators in the room? All right, fantastic. Pastors in the room? Yeah. I'm sorry, we're always going to lose to the DCEs on enthusiastic yelling, but other worship staff leaders, coordinators. Yes, I knew we had a handful of those. And then preschool, did you all raise your hand with the teacher side of things? Very cool. You raised your hand like 3 times, but that's because you wear a lot of hats, isn't it? Oh, fantastic. Hey. Well, even as we begin, we had a couple handouts. We're going to walk through that. Our goal is to, let's just do it like this. Let's introduce ourselves. I'll introduce myself first. The church and school that the 3 of us serve is St. Paul in Peachtree City, Georgia. It's kind of a bedroom community south of Atlanta. It's kind of its own little thing there. I'm Mark Dahn. I'm the senior pastor. I've been there about 5 years now. You can introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Sharon Wallace. I am the principal at St. Paul, and this is my 3rd year, so I'm new to the team.
She came on board right in the middle of COVID.
He's the oldest.
I'm the youngest.
Okay, by 4 days.
By 4 days. My name is Joel Dietrich. I'm the associate pastor. I started as a DCE, and then went to the dark side. I've been.
Did you say what the dark side is, or are you assuming they all know?
We know.
What do you
They know.
You assume the dark side is what?
And I've been at St. Paul for 10 years. Currently do a lot of the executive director kind of role, and then help Mark out wherever I can. So.
All right, very cool. We'll introduce our ministry in a little bit because that's a little bit relevant to some of the ideas we do. But here's the 3 parts that we wanted to cover here today. So part 1, we're just kind of going a moment of step back. Here's how each from our perspectives, here's how we see this joined ministry, because we kind of learned, hey, it looks different depending on which seat you're sitting in and what you bring to the table. So we'll do some overarching. Then we'll kind of go, here's one idea that we kind of buy into and invest in, the Connection Sundays, as one specific idea. And then, probably a lot like you guys, we've been investing and kind of always percolating a ton of other ideas. And depending on how much time we have left, we're just kind of go, all right, popcorn, here's another thing we tried. This went well. Here's another thing we tried. It was iffy. Here's another thing we tried. Don't go there. And then, depending on what room, how much time we have left, I bet there's a handful of those ideas in this room that we would love to steal some from you guys. Anything we have, steal it from us. I think in ministry, there's not plagiarism. It's just helping make each other better as we go with all of that. All right. So let's start with this. Let me just broad strokes. Our school is still a little, compared to a lot of the places I grew up in the Midwest, where schools are celebrating like 75, 100, 130. Comparatively speaking, we're a baby school and ministry. Started in 1997, which means we just celebrated our 25th anniversary. And if I was to describe to you some of the history of our congregation, you would have been, wow, that congregation packed a lot of ups and downs in the midst of this 25 years. You could write profiles about it. And all of that honestly still has part of a feel of God's grace. We're a congregation that could have been shut down many times. And yet we go, wow, look at what God's still doing in the midst of it. Now, having said that, the DNA of where we serve, it unapologetically leads with the school. And when I say that, I mean on day one, they opened how many classrooms? What's that?
Well, they were on day one. There was 9.
Yeah, on day one they opened 9 classrooms, but they didn't have a building yet. Like they did open house under a 10 by 10 tent and said, we promise there's going to be a school there soon. And so if you just think from a church worker standpoint, there was a lot of invested people who took a leap of faith. They did not have a sanctuary for about 21 years, worshipped in the preschool foyer because it had big ceilings, worshipped in the gymnasium, worshipped in the cafeteria. We just built a sanctuary by 2020 because, the reason I'm telling you that, because we understand, we think the answer to how can we best serve our community is by operating an excellent Christian day school. So as much as, we're a church with a school, we're a school with a church. And I can say that without worrying about it, and I don't feel bad about it. We embrace it because we go, it's how we serve. And you go. She's the one who signed us up, so she's going to tell why she brought us into this session.
I think you mentioned that already.
Yeah.
A church and school is a complicated and wonderful and unique opportunity for team ministry. And I personally believe that all children should be in one of our Lutheran schools because I think that we give the life-saving, life-changing message of the gospel. And it's really ultimately what's going to keep our children safe. And the only safety we can guarantee is eternal life, and that comes with faith in Jesus. So that's the opportunity we have in our Lutheran schools. And right now, current times is a real opportunity, I think, in Lutheran ministry. I have been in teaching ministry for almost 30 years, and this is my 3rd school being a principal, so principal for like 20 years. And right now is just such a unique time. The parents are looking for something different than the public schools. They are looking for help with faith formation for their children. In fact, there's articles. This is one article that I referenced up here. You can Google that. Why St. Louis private schools are growing again. And one of the schools in that example is Lutheran North, I believe, in St. Louis. We are getting children now because parents know more about what the public schools are doing. Thanks to COVID, they had to teach it at home. And it's also become more of a national conversation with states going to school choice, people doing things that are, nice for us and maybe not good choices on their part. But it's an opportunity right now, and so being a Lutheran school, it's a great time to be ready to welcome children. And then as a church-school combination, how do we extend that from the child to the family and make that connection where we are serving them as both a school and a church? The recent Barna research is, I think, 2019, 2018. This is 2021 was this one. And here's what's, I think, fascinating about this. If you look at purple and blue together, this is parents who are concerned about their children's spiritual development. So combine the purple and the blue, because after that, the green and the yellow is not very concerned or not at all concerned. And what's interesting to me is that the non-Christian parents, Christian parents, practicing Christian parents, and all U.S. parents are concerned and very concerned about the faith formation of their children. So this is a time of opportunity for us as the church and the school to be able to meet that need. We do that at St. Paul, and you will do that in a team ministry. And team ministry is going to have a little bit of challenge to it, and it's going to, complicate things at times. And it's a wonderful thing when you're on a team that's working, and it's a really challenging thing when you're on a team that's not working, because team ministry is key to making this all work. There will always be the shared facilities. I'm sorry, I switched 2 of the slides, so if I didn't skip one yet, but I might. But there will always be shared facilities, right? Is that the youth room, but then the knitters want to use it, and so that's going to be a problem, and then, right, or the sanctuary chairs get messed up every time we have chapel in there. Yeah, we do that. And then there's going to be shared staff, right? Because we want our teachers to help with Vacation Bible School and Sunday School, and we want our pastors in the classrooms because we want the kids to know them. So there's going to be shared staff overlap. There's going to be shared budget. Even if you have your own individual budgets, let's just pretend, right? Because if one is faltering, what are we going to do with the other? Or if, your early childhood center is supposed to be paying rent to the church, but then they can't because they're struggling financially, what is the church going to do about that, right? And so there's always going to be those shared resources, those shared budget, the shared finances, and then shared opportunities, because we all have goals, and sometimes our goals are going to conflict, and sometimes our goals are going to be really aligned. From my perspective, as the principal on the team, I think intentionality is key. And so we want to be, when we talk about these connection Sundays or anything else for that matter, getting it on the calendar and having a plan is going to keep us on track, right? Just being intentional about, here's where our priorities are, here's where my priorities are. I'd like to be able to do this. Can we get this on the calendar to make sure it happens? And that was part of where we learned from Connection Sundays, because at first we didn't have them really. Well, we really didn't have a calendar before Pastor Joel made one, and then now we have a really fancy magnetic calendar.
We look at it every week.
Yes.
Every week we're writing something. Do we know everything we're doing? Otherwise, you run the chance of resenting each other. I didn't know you scheduled that event, or important things get missed.
We have the Google Calendar too, and the website and all that, but having the calendar in front of our leadership team is awesome and important. But we didn't have them really on the calendar, and so then the teachers would say, well, I know it's my turn my class is going to do the Connection Sunday, but we're not ready yet. Can we just bump it a little bit? And now it's like, no, we really can't, because this is a day where it's going to be. And so part of that, from my perspective, is putting that expectation on teachers, just making sure, being clear up front, you are going to help your children put together their role in a Connection Sunday. At St. Paul, we teach leadership. We're actually called a Leader in Me School, which is a Stephen Covey product that has a curriculum with it that teaches leadership. And so it really ties in really well with our leadership training and our leadership curriculum to be able to say that our kids are going to lead in worship. So we're learning and growing in this process, but at other schools where I've served, we did, the Sunday where the second grade would sing, and then the fourth grade would sing, and early on that worked beautifully. Now, not so much. Like we get maybe 40% of the kids to show up at a singing. So singing just wasn't quite enough, I think, my opinion. So we go beyond that, and we say the kids are going to help read scripture. The kids are going to greet people at the door. So we give them roles. We have a time where they can practice their role, and so then on Sunday morning, the kids know, and then we send home a reminder to the parents, so the parents know that our kid is going to read that Bible verse. Well, now there's a little bit of pressure on that, and I think for parents, there's a little more reward in coming. It's kind of like if you go to the game and your kid sits the bench, it's not as fun. And that's kind of maybe how it's seen when they're up there with their whole class. You're kind of just scared that they'll be the one that twirls around and picks a dress up. But so that's kind of how we have learned and grown with this.
So in terms of the shared thing that she said, like I said, we're 25 years old, but as much as I can keep it alive, because we tell these stories all the time, and I got to re-engage it at 25th anniversary, we get to still go, we're a mission plant. Because if you say you're a mission plant, what does that give you permission to do? You can try anything. And instead of people going, we've never done it that way before, they go, well, that was kind of neat to try. And if it didn't work, you get to go, well, isn't it great that we figured a couple things out, and you just kind of have that spirit of adventure. When Sharon's talking about shared facility or this, that, I don't think we have one room in our facility that is designated at all. I have served in ministries where pick the teacher. The second grade teacher just resented the Sunday school because the kids got in there and they messed up my books. Or we have groups that have met in staff offices. And that includes our sanctuary. We don't have one piece of furniture that is stuck to the ground and immovable in our sanctuary. And we go, man, if I can hold on to that, then I get permission to do a lot of stuff. Because how much do your groups want to kind of claim their territory? A ton, right? And that limits some of your options. And we just go, hey, it's just what it was. We actually don't have teachers complain about it because we go, it's what we do. Every group uses every space. And you just say, and honestly, as principal and senior leaders, we're setting the tone for it. We just go, boy, ain't it great that we can share? And let me help you reset the chairs in your room or something like that, because you're always susceptible to it, right? So early in my ministry, my mom was a Lutheran school teacher. My grandpa was a Lutheran school pastor with a teacher. My siblings all went through Concordia River Forest, through the education program. I married a Lutheran school teacher. So I kind of got the cred to talk about Lutheran schools. And I will say this, early in my ministry, one of the pastors I served with said, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of marrying a teacher and I might serve as a pastor in a school. He says, well, if you're going to do it, you got to want it. Because, and if you are a pastor at a church with a school, you are reminded of that lesson how often? Constantly. If you go to your circuit meetings with other pastors who don't have schools, are their ministries more or less complicated than yours? The answer is always, it's less. You got to want it. Now, if you're going to want it, it's going to make you want it. But then you kind of have to remind yourself, okay, here are the opportunities. I chose this for these reasons. And that's, part of what we just want to go here. Joel and I had done the Masters in Family Ministry, and you kind of learn in that, how does God shape kids, right? God entrusts parents with his kids, and all he ever says is, enjoy them, I just want them back, right? That's the message of parenting. Here's my kids, oh, you're going to love them. Just raise them so I get them back. And you go, well, what's our best chance of doing that? If you're saying I'm firing on all cylinders, it's because a church is doing legitimately good work. They got the children's ministry, the whole good stuff. The family is engaging, nurturing the faith. You're like, whew, we're firing on two cylinders now. And you're like, great. And if you can manage to do it with the Lutheran school, I've been at congregations that did and did not have a Lutheran school. But if you can get it firing on all three cylinders, you're going, that's exactly what we want. So now, then you go, how do I get the cylinders firing right and in order? And you go, man, this looks like we're answering the call that God says, I just want the kids back. Now, I'm going to show you a brief video here. And we did, like I said, we just celebrated our 25th. Some of this is not totally relevant to this organization, but here's what I wanted you to hear. Some of the phrases of people from our congregation. We did interviews of founding members of our congregation. And I just kind of said, how would you guys describe the identity and the partnership between our congregation and our school? And we were the ones editing the videos, so we could tell the story we want to tell, right? But we just listen to it, we go, that's gold, and we go, this is the stuff you want to hear and you want to foster and say. So this was a section of the video that basically said, we started with a school and we go, tell us some of those stories because we want that to continue to inform our DNA going forward.
And then there was this discussion about building a school. And while we are excited over the fact that it really happened, when you were there with 29 other people and you're talking about loans of $4 and $5 million, you're thinking that maybe these people are not really all there to think that each one of them divide $5 million out would have a big chunk of responsibility as it relates to that.
Pastor Jansen was very, very strong-willed. I like that. He had his vision, and he would not retreat. And he would fight you over his vision. If your idea.
Yes, he's in a wheelchair.
In a direction that he didn't want or didn't like, he wasn't going to agree with you. He just wasn't. That just was not his nature, which I liked about him a lot. He had a lot of strength in there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really felt as if there was craziness to this idea, really. I mean, everyone was just astounded by it. We as a family were astounded by it because the largeness of what was about to happen with a small group just seemed almost impossible. But then, what is impossible for our God?
Look who God put here to start this place. I mean, 4 couples that with no kids, and it's all about the school.
Now, clearly, the leader of the pack on this whole thing was Pastor Jansen. Pastor Jansen had a way about him that, you could just see that little smirk about the school, and that, he was, that was something that he knew that was the calling, why he was there and why we were all there as well.
I think it just comes down to everybody knew what the vision was, and I had just been a firm believer, and I felt it immediately that God wants us to be here. This is God's project. It's not our project. It's not something that we decided to do, or even Pastor Jansen. It's what God wants.
The fact that there were no other Christian schools in Peachtree City, and St. Paul was going to be the first one, and we were going to lead the way as it relates to having a school that actually talked about Jesus every single day.
I think it was just always assumed we were going to do that. We were going to have kindergarten through 8th grade. That was just an assumption. Pastor Jansen probably had a lot to do with it. But then, though, we early on, like almost immediately, especially the ladies on the school board, said, we need a preschool. We need to have preschool. And that was another thing we developed.
I remember we came in, and even though the building wasn't done, you could see there was something about the place. There was there was a buzz there. Classes were full. We peeked in, saw some of the classes in sync, and just a feel about the place. And it seemed like it was one of those journeys that you take in your life where God laid out, this is where you need to be right now.
I found it exciting. I thought the move was very exciting because to me, it felt very mission. So I thought it was very exciting. Everybody was playing a part and getting involved, and it was a pretty cool place to be around.
Pastor Jansen had this vision where we are right now. He had it, and that's what we were working towards. We had neither the manpower, the money, all of those things were a pretty grave concern for us as we went forward. But it was faith that carried us through. And we decided to take on this and the money where people were putting up their houses as notes and things like that to make sure that we could actually get this place started. And that is a gigantic leap of faith. That was worth it. God picked us to do this.
We have to reach out to the children. We can't be a church that just just ministers to the elderly, or whatever, that we needed to support the school no matter what, and that the Lord is going to take care of us.
I guess the main one, I think I had the most influence, I was on the first school board. At times, it was quite contentious. Everybody had their own, vision and future, but we all kept our eyes on the ultimate goal. It was difficult, but in some ways it wasn't, because we had the use of the Missouri Synod Church. They helped a lot. We would look at other schools and get a lot of resources and ideas from them.
I think what makes this church and school ministry different is the coordination between the church and school. This church would not exist without this school. This school would never survive without this church. I think the reliance on each other and that need to, the dependence upon each other is what has made this a unique situation.
We had no idea what was going to come. We had no idea. That's strange too. We never thought we would fail. Where did that come from? We never thought that we would fail.
Clearly, this place was meant to be. This is God's plan. And it demonstrates itself every day when you see 200 plus students walking through those doors.
And I think what is so St. Paul, which just tickles me to death, is that we're on the second generation of kids already. We have children of children that started here.
St. Paul is the best. What's good about St. Paul, I just love the loving, nurturing environment that we can create for students in our school, and how every day the kids that walk in, they put a smile on my face, and I try to put a smile on theirs, and we get to learn about God and His world and His creation and history, and it's just so much fun to see learning in their eyes, and to be able to share Jesus with them on top of it is just magical.
All right, so I'm going to pause there. Here's the reason we show you that video. Can you feel the value that they have for their school, right? Have you ever been places where you didn't always sense that? I have. Now, how do I keep that going? Because I want to bottle it, right? And part of our answer is keep telling the story. And the language that we tend to use is, these are our kids. And so you just go, own it. And so you go, where do you maximize your opportunities to do that? Where can the kids be part of, you know what they love to do? We heard, someone's sick in the church. Go, and with the kids you go, we could write notes. We could write cards. So if I'm doing a shut-in visit, it's gold to go, the third grade class was thinking of you. Right? And they go, oh, my kids were thinking of me. Similarly, you go, reading grandparents, we can do this. Okay, we can do that. We had to pause a lot of that for COVID. But, someone that can sit on your lap and you just go read a book, you're like, okay. And we go, it matters. It matters that you get to do all that stuff. Now, these people you just saw there, did you hear the passing line about them putting their house up as notes for getting the loan? It's huge. They made tremendous sacrifices, and I say that to say, don't apologize for asking your people to support your school. And just remind them, it is worth it every single time. Now, that's especially important for me as a senior pastor to say, right? Because if I start giving a hint, the school's kind of difficult, costing us a lot of money, or hard on the facility, tough on the budget, what happens in my congregation? That thing gains momentum. Like, as much as anything, perhaps the most important relationship in our entire ministry is right here, right? That we just kind of get to go, we work it and make it happen. And you have to work it, because you're going to have to want it. But I also say this, don't apologize for asking the sacrifice. Instead, go, here's a story I get to share about why your sacrifice eternally matters. And just keep telling those stories. My first congregation, I served at a church with a school, and then I left that. Here's one of my experiences. I've been places, and I was, for a time, disenchanted with some elements of school ministry. Because of this, they would often say, the school is our mission, right? Because it involves a lot of time, attention, and effort. But often when they would say the school is our mission, they did not mean something missional. They meant, we're just taking care of our kids. They kind of meant an inside thing. Now, here's the weird thing. They would say, non-members could come to our school, but how much were they going to charge them in comparison to the members? Well, when you do a member discount, you're going, non-members can learn about Jesus, but what are the implications of that? But we're going to charge you extra for it. And you want to go, wait, no, we didn't mean to send that message. But you kind of go, no, that's exactly the message you're doing. So is your school aiming, and when someone goes, what percentage of the kids in the school are members? Our answer, about 15%. 1.5. And followed up by, ain't it great? Right? Now, you've been at ministries, or if you've heard of ministries, when people are like, oh, what do you mean? And they lament that, because they would love to see it at 80, 90, 100, or whatever. Now, we would too as they grow over, but we go, we have opened up a new door of substantial interactions, and the way we celebrate it as the vocal leaders, people go, oh, okay, I guess that is a good thing. Now, sometimes, here's a phrase that I've started thinking, we would just love these school families to come to church more, right? It's a perennial thought. Okay, cool, I'm with you. I think that God totally does his thing in worship, and that would really matter. Now, here's my question. Let's use our Lutheran language here. Sometimes we, however, use law means to try to get a gospel end. Here's what I mean. Boy, when you get a choir to sing, you guys were nodding your head. 40%, is that about what you guys get? It's hard to get them all to show up, right? It's rough. So what are you tempted to do to make them come? Bible. Just so you know, this is a performance, and it's a homework grade, right, or something like this. And so I just want to go, that would be an example of, so what does the law do? The law is leaning on you, force, coercion, pressure. Because I want you to worship of your own free accord. So you go, wait a second, you can't use a law means to get a gospel end. Like, hey, we want these people to become members, and they'll become members to get the member tuition discount. What is that? You know, it's using a law means to achieve a gospel end. How well do you think that works? Right, we know the theology. It doesn't. You don't get there from here. You know you have a piece of that when, like, a school family is sick or injured, and you go, well, here's what we do. We never use the term members. Never use we or they. It just doesn't, it makes no sense for us to do, because all of our people are part of the St. Paul family. Why would I draw a dividing line on that? You know, because all it can do is kind of go, my school families go, well, no, we just go to school here. I don't want them drawing that definition, because they, little by little, if you ask a lot of our school families, if I go, who's your church? St. Paul, I guess. And I want to go, well, cool. Let's let that keep gaining momentum. And now, do I do a membership class? Do I want them to have public witness and all? Yes, absolutely. Don't lead with that term. And when a school family goes down, what would you do if a church family, you know, mom's having a difficult pregnancy and she's hospitalized for 2 weeks? What would you do with one of your active families? You would do what kind of things?
Meal ministry.
Yeah, you're going to go, boy, what can we do with meals? Can we help pick up kids? Oh, man, I bet the laundry's piling up at their house. Can so-and-so do this? Now, you would go, do you draw dividing lines of the people you do? You know, you say, well, but that's just a school family. We go, no. They're all part of the, whatever your congregation name, family. And then you get people going, the non-member family, wow, I can't believe you guys did this for us. We're not even members. And we go, forget that. You're part of the St. Paul family. And you go, okay, that's cool. So the other thing that happened is Pastor Joel was a part of, he's been longer than Sharon or I. We had a member discount, and we actually drove some families at times in our congregation's history away from the church because they sent their kids to the public schools. And we're like, we have a school. Why don't you send your kids here? And you can only guilt trip people so long before they get a little tired of coming to church. And guess what? They stopped coming to church and all that. But Pastor Joel was part of doing the reset of kind of getting rid of that for the sake of our overall mission.
Okay. Yes. All right. Now there's a financial reality to this church-school connection, and if it's like St. Paul leads with the school as our mission, and we believe that that's our inroads into the community. The mission field comes to us 5 days a week. They come in the building, and we get an opportunity to share Jesus with them in that way, and so. Different churches, whether you have an elementary school, a preschool, or whatever, and how you financially set that up. Is it a unified budget? Do you have separate budgets? What's the goal then of your ministry? I think your financial piece of that starts to show you what your goals are. I know that sometimes preschools at early childhood can be a revenue stream, and you can be actually getting profit from it, and that can help in other ways in the ministry. For St. Paul, as you saw in the video, our DNA, our mission was this school. And 2014, we dropped our enrollment dropped to 140 students. We pay for 300. That's our capacity. We've never had 300. But that's, if you think about what you're paying for, teachers, classrooms, mortgage, electricity, you're paying for capacity, whether you have it or not. 140 kids is not enough to sustain in our model. We were at one of those points of dire need. And so when that happens, there's all kinds of ideas of what you can do. Combined classrooms, let some teachers go. To us, we felt that to be your path to death. You start combining classrooms. You're not giving the value you claim to give. People are paying for the education, all that kind of stuff. And so, what St. Paul did is we said, all right, we don't have enough money. There's two ways you can go about that. You can say we need to raise our tuition, and a lot of churches do that. We've done it. We decided to try something different. I call it the Kohl's model. You familiar with Kohl's? Kohl's refuses to put their stores in a mall. Now, we don't really have malls like we used to anymore anyway, but the reason is that the rent was too high for Kohl's, and so their model of sales was, maybe the fancy store Nordstrom's is going to try to make $15 profit for every pair of jeans that they sell. Kohl's says, no, we're only going to make $2, but we're going to sell 20 jeans. You know what I mean? And so that was the thing. Do I try to get more money out of fewer kids, or do we try to bring the money down so we can get more kids bringing that in? And so in a time when we were on the door of death, we lowered our tuition by more than 20%. That's a tough sale to do. It's a leap of faith. You have to convince people. But you're convincing people who have that DNA of that video that this is our mission. So it wasn't that hard, and we did. And we rebounded quickly, went 140 to 176 to 212 to 245. That was our peak in there. And so right now we're hovering around that 215 mark and on an upswing again after some transition with pastoral transition, principal transitions, that kind of stuff. So what you are thinking of in terms of what's our mission, what's our connection between church and school, and why do we have a school? That starts to impact your financial decisions. Ministry decisions. Who's the next staff that you're hiring if things are going well? Are you hiring that extra position to boost the school and value added to the school, or is the church thinking, no, it's our turn? And who's having those long-term conversations? If you don't have a team that's having those conversations together, then you have two different entities thinking they're getting the next staff member, and then you have, your fights and all that kind of stuff. So the financial piece matters. It's certainly not the goal or objective of anything we do. I think it's in our mission statement for the school. It used to be anyway. I think we took it out because it was weird language. But the mission statement of the school used to be to provide, this great Christian education for as cheap as possible. Like there's this weird line at the end, But that's the idea. Like our goal is not to try to, build massive revenue streams through the school, but we want as many kids as possible to be able to afford to come to our school. As Sharon said, her vision is that every kid can come. And I love the fact that we haven't turned anybody away for financial reasons. We will find scholarship dollars some way, some shape or form. And we have members that will come to us and say, look, if you ever have a family that's in need, let me know. I'll pony up that money because it's part of the DNA of our church. But that connection piece is how you view your school. Are we willing to make financial sacrifices on the church side because we see this mission and an opportunity to connect with these children and their families, and that's going to impact how you make financial decisions. So I'll tell you, it worked out well for us. I mean, if you try and it fails, don't blame me for the tuition reset idea. But for us, I mean, if you look at the kind of what was going on, just to give you some context to that. When we started, I think it said in the video, there was no Christian school in Peachtree City. There are now many, 3, 4. So we have competition is built up around us, and we kind of were just setting tuition based on like making budgets every year, and then we realized we were in no man's land. You had a good Christian school that was banging it on all levels, charging way less than we were. And then you had like these top-end schools that had all kinds of bells and whistles that we didn't offer, charging more than us. And so we were like in this middle ground of things. So we really took a hard look at our community and what the market was bearing in all of that. And we brought ourselves down to be lower than everybody else. And that was our objective. So there's context to that as well. So I think that's all I'm supposed to talk about.
So let's get on. That's our brief talk about the philosophy and who we are. Let's kind of talk some fun ideas here. So here's the basic thing and what we led with here. One of the ideas that we're currently trying, and we are sticking with it, is we just do what we call Connection Sundays. You do things like this too. We had to do a couple extra little tweaks to make it work. And that's what I want to say. We learned a couple things that didn't work. So it's, if we say it this clearly, it's the church hosts school families for Sunday worship and lunch where school kids are honored leaders and their families are welcome guests. All right, sounds great. Because you're constantly going, we want the school kids to come to church. You've heard it a million times. You want it. However, each one of those phrases in there makes a massive difference. So let me first by showing you, here's a couple pictures of what it looks like. You have stuff like this. The kids, what elements of the 3rd and 4th grade choir came on Sunday are singing, and you pick your glockenspiel parts. We know this kid's going to show up, therefore they get a part, right? So you do that. It looks like, now that's not abnormal. You guys have kids sing, great. And then we go, our kids, right, our school DNA, we think kids can lead any and everything. They're not the church of the future. They get to lead now. So they're going to do the readings. Well, the little kids, if they need help sounding stuff out or they lose their spot on the page, yeah, I help with that. It looks like they're lining up. And how special do they feel if they're the scripture readers? Are they necessarily always good, smooth readers? Do they read as well as the pastors or your lay reader? No. Well, sometimes it depends on your pastor. And let's say they struggle. We had one kid that was stuttering, and another kid that said all kinds of weird stuff in a hot mic. And then what do? You go, ain't it great? Because what we say frames how our people see what happened. And they go, oh, I guess that was good. So they prepare prayers. Who wants to pray for pets? Who wants to pray for grandparents? Who wants to do this? And so with the littlest ones, dear God, please help people who are sick. hand the mic. Here, please help grandmas and grandpas stay healthy, right? They're leading, it's the congregational prayers are led by a children's voice, right? And I got to be okay with whatever it is, because it could be any number of things that happen right there. On, which Sunday was it? I think it was this one, where the kid is coming up to the altar, right? And it's your chance to teach them, like, well, why do we bow there? Well, because we're coming in the presence of our king. And you're kind of teaching all that stuff. And the people see the kids do it, and you've taught something. But I lost about 30 seconds because the kid's going, what's that big book? Why is it always on the same page? Do those candles, I see the smoke, and I like the church service got loose for a little bit of while there. And what's your response? Ain't it great? We love having a place where kids enjoy asking questions about God, right? We're the tone setters with all of it. And honestly, pastors, we have to be the tone setters better than anybody else. You know, like you don't get to be annoyed at that. This is them leading the benediction, right? Because it was, what grade is that? Linda's class? Kindergarten. It was their memory verse. They had been practicing it. The Lord bless you. And yes, this is her reminding them to, that her hand is right there at the end, because she's going, the shape of the cross, right? And so I get to go, you're helping with the pastor job. And we go, what's the pastor job? To tell people about Jesus. Is that only the pastor job? No. But here's the point in just starting to show you this. The kids have to be more than trinkets to be cute in the service. You have to give them meaningful roles, such that if they don't show up, the service doesn't work. Now, behind the scenes, you and I know we could cover for whatever. But your planning is they're doing the stuff of the service, right? And if they want to prepare little testimonies, I'd figure out a way to go, okay, me and Audrey are going to preach the message today because she wanted to say this lesson that she learned from the story of Zacchaeus. Well, guess what I'd be preaching on that Sunday? I'd be making her thing work, right? That kind of thing. Yes?
When you design this with your teachers to help lead, and maybe that's partly chapels and or Sundays, is it lectionary based? Like, do they have that so far in advance that they can go ahead and deal with that, and then it just maybe morphs, or
Yeah, in planning the worship service, we're choosing the Bible readings. It's not right. So the children are taking home, you're going to read this verse, they're going to practice at home, and they're going to show up ready to read the verse they're supposed to read.
How far in advance?
We have them, like I said, on the calendar. So we're probably starting a month ahead. And, of course, with the little ones, it takes them a little bit longer. And then we have a permission slip, if you will, that goes home and says, your child volunteered to read this verse, so in chapel we asked for volunteers and they all loved so they all ran up, I'll read, and I'm like, in church on Sunday, and then we said, parents, your child volunteered to read on the 30th of January.
So it's like that, because okay, and then here's what happens. This is that same picture I showed you earlier about the choir. But I want to point out, I just grabbed screenshots off of our live stream. I didn't even notice this. Okay, here, our school families, they don't know that it's not normal to videotape a church service. They also don't know you don't fight for the seats up front in church. But when you give the kids an honored role, guess where they go and what they do? They especially some grades, they come with the entourage. And you go, this is not a bad problem to have. In regard to what do we choose, I'm the grown-up. I don't ask the kids to work around me. I work around them. So that just makes sense to me. Like, okay, what's a story that they could know and help participate in? Or the teacher, do you have that I don't know, that song that you always sing? It's loosely connected with Zacchaeus was a wee little man. All right, I can preach on that. I'm the grown-up. I work around them rather than going, you work around me. That just seems to make some logical sense.
Thank you. Do you
Our traditional service I am, our contemporary service I'm not.
Okay, so I was just gonna ask that. So they're joining you in your contemporary service in general?
It could be either.
Okay.
It depends what meal we're doing that day. And the meal matters because we host our school families with a meal every time, because how can you host them better? That's what you do when you host people.
Yeah.
You feed them. If we're doing a brunch, it could be our early traditional service, because then I can do that in between services. We normally do it at our late service, because then I can have people grilling outside hot dogs and hamburgers, and that's when I can feed a lunch meal.
And can I ask, I hope this isn't a sacred cow for anybody in this room, how does the music change if it's during your traditional service? 'Cause I'm not sure that all hymns are as...
Yeah, no, you choose hymns,
Okay.
but pastors do this anyways. If you have a Sunday where you're welcoming people, I mean, we have some intricate hymns that we could sing them, great. I might not do that on the guest Sunday. That's when you're like, well, Amazing Grace is going to get sung today. Or, there's How Great Thou Art, it's going to happen. And if there's a hymn that the kids have learned in chapel, or a song, what you want is the kids showing up, and they don't know that in church not everybody does actions, right?
Or sing really loud.
Yeah, or do whatever. And now, granted, they're more subdued, but you still see kids doing this, and then people are excited. And you just kind of go, ain't it great? And that's, so you have a kid twirling in the middle aisle. Ain't it great, right? So you just kind of have that. And the parents actually think it's great, right? My kid had an important role. They think it's a program. They think it's a school program. Okay. We do it every Sunday. Come back for the program next week. Yeah. All right. Here's a couple things that don't work. So when I was a new pastor, I had to cash in a couple chits, because has every school tried things like this before? Yeah. Do your teachers like, okay, but we've tried that before, and so at that point I could be like, just go with me. Let's try it a little bit different. It helps to have a principal that says at staff meetings, this is what we do, right? Your teachers, I don't have time to practice for a service. I'm behind on science as it is, or whatever. Not doing it's not an option. It's been calendared for 3 months. Okay, well, here we go. and we'll find the time. Teachers can find time, right? They figure it out. And you kind of go, how can we set you up for success? My answer is, what do you want us to do in the service? My answer is, whatever you want to set your kids up for, that's going to set them up for success. Do the preschool kids have a finger play that they just do along with it? Wonderful, let's do that. We tend to use our middle school somewhere in the later spring. The chorus is rehearsing for, solo and ensemble festival. Let's do it around that. My preschool teachers are like, can we do it later in the year when they're a little older? Great. You can usually start with 3rd and 4th grade, because they're good readers. They're excited to read. We can do that early in the year. And go, well, what roles can they do? You name it. What if I have kids that love to color? Great, we're going to have bulletin covers that week. We're going to do whatever it is. Kids, we might have 8 bulletin covers because they did this. And we go, wow, okay. And you see the kids kind of trade it and make it happen. Whatever. Kids have an important, valued role.
I have a question.
Yes, sir?
Kind of logistics for it. How many classes do you have, and how do you fit them all in a school year? If you have more than 8 classes and you're doing this once a month.
Here are the bundles that we do. Like, the size of our school, about 100 in preschool and then about 100 in the elementary school. Preschool is their own Sunday, right? And that's later in the year. They're a little bit older. We'll figure out what they can do, and we'll do it. And then it's usually by 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, basically because that's our chorus. And then a National Lutheran Schools Week. But honestly, we get about as many when we do the classrooms as when we do because at the National Lutheran Schools Week, you go, everybody's welcome. But you don't get more kids the thing is, when you aim it at a classroom and say you have honored roles, we had about as many as National Lutheran Schools Week. Now, were we bummed that we didn't have a huge swell of people for National Lutheran Schools Week? A little bit. Yeah. I mean, I would love to kind of go, wow, great. But we just learned that having them have particular roles where they lead, that's the secret sauce. Kids might mess up the divine worship. Ain't it great? Right? And this isn't saying, our worship stuff matters. We're still going to do a loose liturgy. We're going to have all the elements because we're who we are. But I explain it those weeks. Yeah.
You said that it depends on the meal as to which service that they're at. Oh. How do you choose, do you have a rotating, meal that you...
Let me go to the meal. So, we've learned there's a couple meals that work well, right? We have Joel bought a big old grill because we got 3 guys that like doing it, and so you set that up outside the doors of the sanctuary, and on their way out, yeah, it's great because it's hard to get them to go to different spots of the building. But if you put the meal right between them and the car, like we eat it in our circle drive right at the drop-off. We cut that off and set up chairs and tables there.
When the weather wasn't good, we ate in the narthex and the hallway.
Yeah, it was tight, but ain't it great that we all get to be so cozy? We did our last one. Here's our learning thing. We said, okay, church people, you want to help support this? Make soups and chilies. It was January. Here was our miss with that. It's messy for kids, and they don't necessarily love soups and chilies. They just ate a lot of the Fritos that were alongside the chili, and it wasn't a win for parents because kids ate a lot of crap that they, or they just had gobs of cheese that they grabbed from the chili. They're like, okay, if we were to do that again, we'd have a side of mac and cheese or 3 trays of chicken nuggets. Yeah, or whatever. Well, hot dogs and hamburgers is one of our go-to. Nacho bar, that was great. Here's a vat of meat, and do you want to make it in a taco? Do you want to do it in tortilla? This kid doesn't like tomatoes. That kid doesn't like... Or this kid just wants cheese nachos. Great, Mom. Make whatever works here. Right? And so we have some experimentation with that. Let's just do this. So here's what's needed. We kind of need the teachers to own it and set the kids up for success. Practice the readings. Now, are all your teachers going to be enthusiastic? No. What do you do then?
Pick good songs. They got enthusiastic.
Yeah. You do it anyway. Yeah. Because the principal gets to go, this is what we do. I don't know, your teachers aren't necessarily enthusiastic about every subject. Do you go, yeah, math's not really my thing? You're like, yeah, no. There's math. and this is one of our core things. Pastors, we can derail this whole thing. You got to be okay with the mess. Yeah, and not only that, it's probably better to celebrate it. Ain't it great, right? And meantime, you're looking like, oh, they spilled pop in the sanctuary. Ain't it great? Right? You just you just value it. The students have to have important roles for the students. Families feel welcome and encouraged. The congregation hosts it. We have people. We do have some people. I'd be lying if I said some of our church members know it's going to be a little bit of a chaotic service. Some people, I'm a little bummed to see it, but they'll go to the other service. Okay, they wouldn't have been very good welcoming anyways. Some of our people choose to come to that service. Like, we have traditional worshipers, and she goes, but I'm going to go to the next service because someone needs to host those families. Like, they come back for the luncheon just to sit with school families. When you raise the value over time, but you have to go, and we prep it. Next week, be ready to be great hosts. And you guys can invite a friend too, because we're going to have a meal, right? All that kind of stuff. It all works together. You want to say anything more on that?
Yeah, I think one thing, a couple of things we learned. One was that if you practice it, it puts it in the kids' heads that this is coming. And so if you could practice it in chapel, that would be ideal. because then, okay, this Wednesday we're going to have this scripture reading and the kids are going to sing this song, because they're going to do that in church on Sunday. And then the other, when we did that, we figured out we stream our chapel services, so we have this recorded now. So we played the song, or, I mean, you can't do it with everything, but with the song it worked really well. We played the video of the song while the kids were up there singing to it. And so even though we had 10 out of 18 kids, the 18 were on the screen, and so then for the congregation they got to see a glimpse into school too, which is an important component of that.
Yeah, that we kind of stumbled across that, because you're looking, you're going, oh, we barely have enough kids to carry the song, and all of a sudden she's like, we could pull up the chapel live stream. So we messed with our tech crew, right? We had to do that real quick. Put that up there, and then they're like, oh, look, it isn't. And our congregation goes, the second grade sang. There were 7 kids there, but they saw the whole second grade. Yeah.
Do you ever have any issues with kids who can't be, for protection purposes and such? I was a foster parent, so we had kids who couldn't be live streamed or anything, or
Right, we have
Yeah.
all those permissions pre-signed and all of that. And if it's not going external, because all our chapels, like you couldn't Google St. Paul Chapel.
You wouldn't be able to see our chapels. They're not public.
No, but
And that's the recording we're going to use in church, but the church does get live streamed. So we have to be careful about that a little bit.
Yeah, our families do know we live stream our church. And then they need to make that call from there. So here, we've already said most of this stuff. Practice it in chapel. Like, they are gonna be the leaders. Didn't they do such a great job? And their friends clap for them, right? You set the value. Someone says, I'm not excited about this. That's what we do. And let's be good hosts. Yeah, question?
What can I do as not a pastor to convey the importance of this to my principal if they're not enthusiastic themselves to set the tone to their staff?
Yeah, I did. So we have a DCE on staff, and our DCE has been very instrumental in coordinating the efforts. I do very little with this, honestly. The DCE makes up those postcards that we gave out at the door, makes sure that it has the right date on it and all that, hands it out to the teachers to send home. The DCE works with the teacher to plan, okay, who's going to read what Bible verse and get the permission sent home and all of that. So, like, as a principal, if you're going to do that and take the work on yourself, yay. That's what I would say. But I'm sure not everybody.
Our chapel services, for a large part, I just would be worried that our principal doesn't have the enthusiasm to say, it's just what we do.
Sure. You might go to your most willing teacher, someone who you think would buy in, and start there. Right. You can always say, hey, it's just an experiment. Yeah.
You can get away with a lot of stuff when you go, I just want to try this as an experiment. Invite your pastor to that chapel and go, hey, I was thinking, what if the kids, wasn't that a cool chapel? I think they'd be willing to help lead the church. Maybe he bites on
We're
it.
in vacancies, so I'll just hijack it.
Oh, there's a lot of... That's experience right there. The meals. You go, how do you pay for it? Thrive in Action Teams. You can turn $250 into a lot of hot dogs and mac and cheese, right? And so you just get someone, and then, then you have a congregation member that feels like they owned it, and they helped made it happen, right? And so you just, it's worth knowing who has action teams. All right. That's Connection Sundays. There's a couple other ideas that we have to think about, but it's worth just kind of pausing here. Any questions or reflections, or should we just keep moving on? Go on.
Like you said, you're the adult. You go around the kids,
Yeah.
which is awesome. What if you maybe have a pastor that gives you a little pushback? Like the whole idea of the kids.
I hate to say it, but you got to work around the pastor. If you have that resistance, you go, what will he do that you can work with? And he'll go, well, okay, we could do, here's the reading for the 3rd week in Lent. We don't do a lot during Lent. We also do them on non-communion Sundays. Because it's just a logistical thing. It just kind of simplifies it, because I don't necessarily always want that to be the first conversation, because they don't get it. We're not in Lutherland. We're in Georgia,
Yep.
Okay. So that's just kind of a prudent thing.
So you just kind of have to go with what he'll let you do.
Yeah, because you don't really have a choice, do you?
Well, and you can start small.
Yeah.
Right? Like, first do they're going to read. Right? Like, or that's not a big deal. And then you can, like, hey, that was...
If you think you can deliver the families, what delivers the families is the kids ran the service and they're kind of proud of it.
Yeah.
And starting small is tough that way.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, they just had a token part. But no, they owned it, they led the service. That's part of what gets the traction, and why starting small is tough.
Well, and that's almost where, like, practicing in chapel comes into play. And using chapel to be like, hey, look at that.
You normalize the concept, yeah.
Yeah, and normalize it in chapel. Say, because I'm the chapel coordinator for our association school. Like, okay, every week I'm going to have now my 4th grade class, they're going to do all the readings, or they're going to lead songs, or they're going to do the prayer, or lead the Apostles' Creed. Like,
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, that's great, because you could. When I'm kneeling in the midst of the kids, it's getting harder on my knees, but we do it. So here's what's awesome then. You come to the time, the Lord's Prayer. Our kids are it's cool to be in chapel and hear all the kids pray the Lord's Prayer. They do it every week. They've memorized it. So I want my congregation to hear some of that. So I will literally smush the kids in, and I'm holding the mic around them. Because how cool is it to be led with a kid's voice saying Lord's Prayer, and then your congregation, who might be tempted to go, the school costs money, or it's difficult, or it messes up the facility, they, at the moment where they go, our kids, they all knew the Lord's Prayer, and it's a win, right? And no, be wary, because when you're doing the mic like that, what do kids like to do when you start holding a mic near them? All of a sudden, yelling the Lord's Prayer becomes popular, right? But you just have to flex with it, right? Ain't it great? Let's share one other idea. Peter?
Something that I did this last year for the first time is on our registration form, we ask for church home and pastor, because if they don't put the pastor's name, that says something. I'm sort of disconnected, or maybe connected to this church, but if I don't know the pastor's name, well, how connected are you? But I wrote an email to every single one of the incoming new students, and to their parents actually, and by name said, we're glad that your child named so and so is coming to our church. I see on the registration form that you attend so and so with the pastor named so and so. But we want you to know that you're a part of our family too. So if there's anything that we can do to serve you, let us know. And naturally prepared several different emails that I inserted names and stuff. But that worked. I had a family that lost a dad, and she contacted me. Now I didn't end up doing the funeral because they did have another church home. But I don't know that she would have contacted me had I not had that little outreach.
Yeah.
I also had another parent contact me when she was going in for surgery. This is the first time that that's happened. And so I attribute that to that communication that's going to continue, for anybody new coming into our center.
Yeah, thank you. Great idea. The lesson you learned that we also did was, don't just ask if they have a church home. Because what are they doing at their home? Honey, what's our church? Baptist. What's the pastor's name? I don't know. Handed it, and then I know they're functionally unchurched, right? Then they're fair game. I get to go at them, right? All right. One other idea I wanted to share that's fun is, do your churches give out Bibles? All right. Now, how do you do it? We end up going, well, some places it shows up in the classroom. It's part of the supply list. Well, so we go, here's what we do. We don't give up Bibles. We give the Bibles to the parents to give to their kids. Because we're not parenting them, right? And then here's how you customize it. We give to our 4-year-olds, pre-K 4, a Read to Me Bible. The second graders, they get their first NIV Bible, or whatever version we continue to use through our school. And then you have a preparation session with each of those, and you wrap it up as a present, and you give it in church on a second grade Connection Sunday, which we did on Reformation Day because a Bible, right? This is kind of cool. So in the prep sessions with the pre-K 4, that's where we teach them, here are some of the prayers we do in the school. Because what do parents ask you? What's that meal? My kid's trying to make me pray before meal. What is that one you do? And you go, oh. So I have a laminated card. Here's the prayers that our teachers, and you practice them with the snack time in your session. And you go, and here's a couple bedtime prayers you can do too. And this is a great time to use your Read to Me Bible. With the second graders, they do other things. They write a little blessing, do it all this, have a scavenger hunt, learn how to find things in the Bible, all that. But here's what it looks like on the Connection Sunday. So they wrap it up. That's left over from an earlier service, wrapping paper. And yet, do we leave it there? Yeah, because it looks like Christmas morning. And that's what your family room looks like. So the parents wrap them up, and we make it a big deal. Because you're getting God's life-giving word, and they know it's a big deal because we treat it like a big deal.
Now, I see that you guys have things that are wrapped up all pretty. What do we like to do with presents? Do we just leave them wrapped up pretty and just stare at them? What do we do? Do we open them like in a boring way and slow, or do we just go crazy and rip into it? There's some crazy that happens over here. I just heard a reverberation with that. Now, here's what we do. When there is something that's a tremendously big deal and awesome things that are happening, what do? If your favorite team scored a touchdown yesterday, what did you do? Yeah, well, that can work too. That's good. Yeah. So, here's what we're going to do. They're going to rip into their presents. They're going to know it's a big deal because we, congregation, are going to make it a big deal. That's how we communicate value. And when you guys get your Bible all unwrapped, what do you do with it? All right, hold up high. And here's why you do that. Because with every kid that lifts up their Bible opened up high, what are you going to do? An extra cheer when you're going to go, yes, they got theirs. Yes, they got theirs. All right. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? All right, let's count it down. You'll cheer on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you will rip open. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Get at it! Come on! Rip that thing open! You guys got this! Come on! Let's see it! Who's got? Yeah, you got it! Yeah, they're still going! All right, we're still going here! Oh man, it's just getting into... Yeah, look at this! Oh, one more! Double layer wrapping! Double layer! Oh, we got one more coming! We got one more coming here! Yes! All right! All right. Let's do this now. Because God's Word is at the center of who we are. Moms and dads and kids all hold on to the Bibles together. This is what joins us and our families. God's truth. Will you join me in a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, I thank you for the treasure of your word. We thank you for these children. We thank you for their parents. We thank you for this congregational and school family. We ask that your word would be a lamp to our feet, would be a light to our path, and that it would inform and give life to these students until the day when they see you face to face. In Jesus' name we pray, and all God's people say, all right, and my preschool families, if you want to go have a seat.
All right, we won't go with that. So after that, then the second grade parents read their blessing to their kid that they wrote in the front cover of the Bible. And all we ask them is, just write a note, tell your kid why you want them to have a Bible. That's all you have to do. The stuff that they produce is gold. Now, sometimes it's pretty moralistic. We want you to know God's plans and his law for your life. I can handle that, right? But sometimes, I want you to know, and you just kind of go, I just hand the mic. And are they excited to speak in church? No, but they get the value. Because we've said, here's the important value.
So, if you're having families who come to your church, or school, who are not necessarily churched, but that they're going to come to a Sunday morning because found some value in it. How do you get those Bibles to the parents?
The teachers communicate in their class newsletter.
Oh, okay.
And this year's second grade class, they do not show up for a lot of events. She had to work. And we had to do an extra session. This parent wouldn't come to the one that was right after school, or the one in the evening, or this.
Did they get a session to learn about it first?
Yeah, because we kind of coach them. Because that's how you set them up to write the blessing. Now, there's some parents that didn't show up. They go, can you give my kid a Bible too? Yes, we're going to figure that out.
Them at school then, or?
Well, I think we wrapped them and gave them a surrogate parent, someone that would go with them that day, if the kid wanted to do it. And if they didn't show up that day, they get it at school. Yeah. But there's a million different ways you can do it, but that's what our Reformation Day looked like.
Do you do that every month? We do that on Reformation.
That one happens to be Reformation Day, where we do the Bible Revival annually. And now they kind of get it, because they've seen it for a few years. And then it's about every 6 to 8 weeks we have a Connection Sunday.
About every other month, I'd say.
Yeah. And then you just you just set it up on your church calendar. When are you okay having that take over the Sunday? And when do your meal volunteers have the time to do it? Because they are huge pieces. And so it kind of goes around Cindy and Deb and Sue's schedule. Why? Because if they're on board, I'm going to have the meal taken care of. Right. And you know those people. You have, and they kind of get it. I don't know. What time were we supposed to stop now? Let's. Here's the couple other ideas. Sharon, why don't you talk about open houses?
So at the open house, our pastors are there, and our DCE is there, and so we do. It's easier for us to have open houses. It's easier for me, honestly, just because otherwise I'd be giving tours all the time. So we kind of try to funnel them toward a couple of open houses for new students, and especially we get preschool. We have to bring in all new every year, right? So. But the cool thing is the pastors are there, the DCE is there, and then we have a rotation through the building where I do an introduction and then I hand them off to the next person and they hand them off to the next person as they go through the building. But to have the pastors there means a lot because they get that connection right away and the families can see, how involved the pastors are. And then if it's a tour, I'll try to catch one of them on the way, or, like Pastor Joel, he does all the facilities. He's usually walking through with a ladder or something. I'm like, this is our pastor. But try to introduce them. And if we can get them to tour in person and meet a pastor, very high percentage are going to come, actually. But then they like knowing that if their family has a need, that we have the pastors there. And then I usually tell the story about the little first grader who lost her grandmother and was able to talk to the pastor a couple times, and that really helped her. And so they can kind of relate to what that kind of need would look like where you would involve a pastor.
So while she's getting the cohorts ready for a tour, often my job is they're gathering, and she's going like crazy, taking this. She does the first leg and hands them off to Pastor Joel, who takes them down the steps there. I'm just there in the gym buying time until the next cohort goes through. But pastors, this is what we do. We work a room, we host, we show interest, we talk. The same way you would a guest that came on Sunday morning. You're probably going to go find that person and shake their hands and go, well, why wouldn't I do that with every cohort or group that comes in? Oh, we're so glad you're here. I'm Pastor Mike. Oh, how old is your kid? Right? Just being there. And honestly, it's a way of showing her I value her open house and ministry. And so I'm like, well, that's when I met them and I showed her I support her. Game on. Is there anything else? You guys all do a VBS. Well, okay, you could. VBS, it becomes a Connection Sunday. Because did kids learn songs in VBS? Heck yeah. Make a meal, sing it in worship, the kids get to own it. And guess what your message is going to be? some sort of VBS theme, right? Because you go, I learned that lesson, right? And you can do little pieces of that with it as well. And then you kind of, whenever you do, you just have your next step. So those flyers that Sharon had about the school, you go, hey, we have a school here. Or here's when our Sunday school, did you like VBS? Sunday school starts in a month, right? Always, what's the next step? So you produce events. And the goal is that little by little, they start identifying with your congregation. And at some point, we had one family that goes, I don't know, I guess we're Lutheran now. Right? And they just kind of slid into it. That feels like a success story to us. But you have to kind of produce the events, because they're not, church isn't an intrinsic value, but they'll come to an event, especially if it's for their kids and they have an important stuff. All right, I think we're up against supper right now. Are there any final thoughts or questions or anything we have? Because I feel like we have about done our time for a Friday afternoon.
Are you going to share something that didn't work?
Some of the what?
Something that didn't work?
Well, the soup thing didn't work.
Yeah.
We actually do that on Wednesday nights. We do chapel in the morning, and then it's the same chapel at night. But we have a peanut butter and jam station
Yes.
with goldfish.
That's all we needed. We
That's
needed
how
a
we get
peanut
the
butter.
goldfish.
That is not a bad idea.
Actually, Pastor Mark had this really cool idea where we went to Chick-fil-A, because that's what we do. And we got a cup holder with 4 coffee cups, and they could go through the soup line and get samples. And then people in the congregation loved making the soup. So in a lot of ways, it really was a win, except for the fact that kids don't like beef barley soup. So that, that was the one part. But
when we did Connection Sundays without specific leadership roles that the teachers didn't fully own, it didn't work.
yeah, and it's communication is huge. When we're not good at communicating to parents what the kids are doing, or that the kids are doing, then it falls out. It falls apart.
I'll tell you another one that didn't work.
I was going to say, we got a lot of these stories.
The Natural Lutheran Schools Week was, not that long ago, and we had a Connection Sunday, and we're thinking it's the whole school, so it's just going to be overload. So we said, come to either service, and then come up to sing. And so at the first service, that's when that video came in, because there were 4 kids or 5 kids that walked up to sing this song, and they all came to the 10:45. So 10:45, it is a nice crowd, right? So then we're like, okay, we got to pick a service that we're going to invite them to, instead of saying just pick one. That didn't work at all.
Dribble Trickle Kids doesn't feel like a celebration, and the kids didn't feel like they were part of something special. That was where we quick, pull up the chapel video and put that up there, because we saw, there are not many kids here. So we had to kind of go, how can we spin it so it feels like a win? And
I can see another reason, it gives, if you don't pick a service, it doesn't give the parents who are unchurched a direction. Because you're splitting.
there's too much choice.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't know what this service is like, and I don't know what this service is like, but this one's later. My kids hate getting up. I guess I'll go to that one.
Yeah, it's Sunday. Yeah, you're probably exactly right. Lesson learned. All right, hey, thank you very much for taking the time. We'd be happy to visit more, but let's all get some good supper. Thanks for coming. We appreciate y'all.